This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
This summer, serve up the Cookout Classics, Heinz Ketchup, and Kraft Singles. Every good burger needs a layer of perfectly melty cheese and thick, rich ketchup. We all know it's not a cookout without Heinz and Kraft.
100!
Welcome to 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal. The next time you're in Las Vegas, or if you currently live in Las Vegas or the Las Vegas area, you need to visit the Metal Blade Museum. Now, not only are there artifacts from Metal Blade artists like Metallica, Slayer, Cannibal Corpse, Gwar, Lizzie Borden, there's also artifacts from bands that we had something to do with as well, like Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, Alice in Chains, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Alice Cooper, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really great metal museum. It's located right near the Strip in Las Vegas. Also, our retail store is also now in the museum. So you can go pick up your Metal Blade vinyl, CDs, collectibles, shirts, all sorts of cool stuff. Just go to metalblade.com/museum for all the details. This episode, we're going to talk about a phenomenal song with a lot of components to it. Orion by Metallica. Of course, it's Cliff Burton's signature song, and we all still miss him very much, so it'll be fun to talk about him. We're going to talk this episode with my buddy Sam Dunn from Banger Films. If you've watched Flight 666 by Iron Maiden, 2 Rush documentaries, I believe, the ZZ Top documentary, Alice Cooper, Super Duper Alice Cooper, Metal Evolution. I mean, he's done so much stuff at Banger Films, and he's a real true diehard fan. So we'll talk with him about that. We're also going to squeeze in a little Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Iron Maiden, because that was the song he originally wanted, but it kind of got messed up. So we're doing this one, but we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk to Jay Ruston about the production, and we begin it all in the Great White North with a man who has written almost 150 books about hard rock and heavy metal, Mr. Martin Popoff.
All right, Metallica, Orion. So here we are up into the Master of Puppets album, March 3rd, 1986. They're recording this at Sweet Silence in Copenhagen. Flemming Rasmussen. Kind of a drier, more powerful, caveman-y sort of production. A little bit Anthraxy, I suppose, compared to Ride the Lightning. Ride the Lightning has a little bit warmer bass, but both of them are really, really interesting and good productions. They just have different personalities to each other. I consider this album kind of Ride Part 2. Love it to death. It's actually considered statistically, pretty much objectively, the greatest heavy metal album of all time. But I prefer Ride to it a little bit. So yeah, we've got an instrumental here. Orion is a star constellation, but it's also, in Greek mythology, a giant huntsman whom Zeus or Artemis placed amongst the stars as a constellation. Doesn't really matter, I suppose, too much, unless you want to read into the music here being the story of this giant huntsman, this godlike figure, Orion. But long song, 8:28, second to last track, Call of Cthulhu, if you recall, was 8:55. So very, very similar sort of length to the previous awesome instrumental. Cliff Burton had a lot to do with this one. It's written by James, Lars, and Cliff. Love the bass tone. You get a little bit of that anesthesia pulling teeth bass tone to start, and also a little later on. And Cliff, in that later on section, he's the key kind of putter together of this thing. Love the infectious riff that to kick off, and that tempo, this kind of trudging, resolute, mid-paced tempo. You get that characteristic signature Lars drumming where he's putting these major, hard-to-miss accents in odd places on it. So he knows what to do with these mid-paced things to make them interesting. But yeah, so at 4:05, you actually get this long, quiet Steve Harris / Iron Maiden-like mellow section with the bass part. I mean, you get the bass thing just sounds like one of Steve's slightly boring bass intros or bass parts kind of thing. And then you've got this long droning twin lead, and again, Cliff had a lot to do with this. And this is all over top of like a halftime beat. It's long, and then it starts to build a little bit. At 6:25, you get these power chords put underneath it. At 6:40, it modulates, and here's where we get sort of the return of this great Cliff Burton, bass masterpiece kind of put together. There's guitars dovetailing with this thing. There's some harmonizing. So it's Cliff showing that bass can be used as an instrument other than holding down the bottom end. It's pretty cool. 6:55, it goes to a new theme. We've got that 1 and 3 beat, that thing where you're like hitting the snare on the 1 and then on the 3 sort of thing. Sometimes we call this a switch up in the beat, switching it around with more soloing. And then you get at 7:35, you get a return to the chugging, but again, yes, still on a 1 and 3 beat sort of thing. And then double bass is feathered in there nicely, and it goes into a slow fade. We all know what a fade is, but sometimes they do them faster and sometimes they do them slower, and this is a slow fade. But the interesting thing about this is we never get the best part ever again. That cool opening sort of passage, which now we have to go back and call it an intro. It didn't feel like an intro at the time, 8 minutes ago, but now it feels like an intro, and we never get that again, which is pretty interesting in this song. So yeah, it's a song that doesn't go crazy with too many weird parts. For a long instrumental, it's actually pretty soberly and conservatively put together. And a lot of Metallica fans consider this the greatest instrumental they ever did. But it is definitely a very musical track on an album just studded with very musical and accessible and understandable and just really gorgeously written thrash songs. So there you go, Metallica, Orion.
Thank you. I'm going to say Dr. Martin Popoff. He should get a doctorate in metal at this point, especially he's dissecting songs like that. Very nice. And of course, I agree with him that Ride the Lightning, I will take over this record, but there really is no wrong answer there. Those are probably the two greatest Metallica records, I think. For the most part, anyone would agree. So thanks again, Martin. Always appreciate you.
This episode is brought to you by Tidy Cats, here to level up your litter game with their new Performance Plus lineup. Your home is your happy place, your cats, VIPs. So when it comes to the litter box, excellence isn't optional. Choose from products that specialize in max power clumping, low tracking, or odor fighting so advanced, stink won't see it coming. Tidy Cats Performance Plus. Mission mighty, keep it tidy. Shop now at tidycats.com.
At Ollie, we've got wellness down to a science. From PMS to pregnancy to menopause, our women's wellness line offers science-backed support for every stage. No judgment, no shame, none of the stigma. Just supplements designed to meet you wherever you're at. Ollie, choose science over shame. Find support at a retailer near you or on ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Get 2 times membership rewards points per dollar on eligible purchases in key business categories, as well as on each eligible purchase of $5,000 or more, on up to $2 million in eligible purchases per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
All right. We welcome back our old friend, the legendary producer. Go look up his Wikipedia or his Instagram or whatever it is.
I don't have a Wikipedia.
Oh, really? Well,
No.
somewhere there's a list of all the records that Jay Ruston has produced, and it's pretty massive. Anyway, we welcome Jay Ruston. How are you?
I'm great, Brian. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to make a Wikipedia page for you. That's criminal.
Good luck finding somebody to do it.
All right, so we're talking about the classic Metallica record. A lot of people believe their best record. I'm more of a Ride the Lightning guy, but I do prefer the production on Master of Puppets. And of course, Orion, which is, the great Cliff Burton song, and what an amazing tribute to him and how amazing a bass player he was and how different he was from everybody else. And certainly the song and the production highlighted the bass. And he played some of the guitar on this song as well. And some of the bass sounds like very lead, like a lead guitar almost kind of thing, which is very unique and different. So that's really interesting how they put all that together. Of course, it's the second record that they did in Denmark with Flemming Rasmussen. And this was definitely the record you can kind of feel like these guys have kind of figured it all out now.
I know you're a Number of the Beast guy, but this is the greatest heavy metal album of all time.
Gotcha. All
next to maybe the first Black Sabbath record.
Yeah, you're not alone in thinking that, by the way.
This record is perfect. I have so much to say about the production and the sound, and I love Flemming. I love Injustice for All. I love this album. I love Ride the Lightning. I wasn't huge into Kill 'Em All. It came a little before my time. I discovered Metallica in 1988 when I was in high school, and I heard Injustice for All. And I was just mesmerized by that record. And like all kids do, you go backwards and you start discovering what was before, which brought me to this record. And Cliff Burton, and I was already a bass player at that time. My guys were Steve Harris and Geddy Lee, and a few others. And Cliff was a bass player. I could never master his parts. I could play some Rush songs. I could play some Maiden songs. I found his stuff incredibly difficult to play. He was so unique, as you said. Mm-hmm. And just his tone, I never really heard that kind of bass sound before. And the way they made it work with the guitars, obviously, because when you get to Injustice for All and there is no bass, that's a big job and a hard job to fill. And there was only one Cliff. Still to this day, as amazing as Robert is, he's essentially playing what the guitars are playing. And Cliff wasn't necessarily doing that.
No.
Now, what I love about Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets is they were tracked on a Trident A range at Sweet Silence in Copenhagen. I'm sitting in front of a Trident as we speak. One of my favorite sounding consoles. I love the way they make drums sound. I know Michael Wagner mixed it. I forget where he mixed it. But the thing about Michael Wagner records, and a friend of mine and I've had this discussion, he's like, do Michael Wagner records hurt your ears a little bit? I said, yeah, a little bit. They've got like this intense upper mid-range that kind of bite your head off. But it also sounds huge and awesome, because metal now is very smooth sounding. Put on a brand new metal record, and when I say metal, even hard rock like Sleep Token or any of these more modern records, it sounds like smooth as silk, which to me is the opposite of what metal should sound like. Metal should like jump out of the speakers at you with like some form of aggression, and Michael's mixes do that, especially this record. Like you put it on, the opening of Battery, the opening of Master of Puppets, it's like a Sherman tank. And to me, that's metal. And they nailed it. Everything about this record is nailed. The drums sound absolutely ridiculous. The guitar sound is insane. I defy anybody to reproduce this guitar sound. Nearly impossible.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about this record, because the first three records, the guitars are similar, but not exactly the same. And this one, it's a thicker, fuller sound to me.
It's gnarly. I mean, it's just so good. And you can look up the list of gear they use and everything, but Flemming had such a massive part of that, because once they mic'd up the guitar sound, he put it through a series of EQs outboard and on the console to design the sound, which they could never do with just an amp and a guitar. So it's a pretty serious like post EQ situation, which I think is why a lot of people haven't been able to recreate it, because you've got a guy with ears clearly designing that. So by the time it got to Michael Wagner, it was probably, push the faders up, it sounds like a record.
Yeah, and I think the story was that they ran out of time, because I think the band and Flemming were mixing it, but somebody made the decision. And it's not well documented, whether it's the label or the band or the management, but somebody sent it to Michael Wagner to finish it off, basically.
I think they had to get on tour with Ozzy.
Yeah, probably.
Was one of the main issues, but which is an opportunity, of course, they could not turn down. And clearly
changed their lives.
But yeah, it's just, I've always loved the way this record sounds, and I love that the drums have like this giant reverb on them and everything. I think it's great.
Well, that's the interesting thing about these Metallica records, and because they're made in the middle of the 80s, where there's a lot of, especially the snare sound, that 80s snare sound, which kind of drives me nuts. And these didn't really have that as much. I think they really...
It's a different...
Yeah, I think you couldn't really do that on a Metallica record because a lot of it's so fast and there's so much going on. If you put reverb on a snare, it's going to really muddy it all up. But yeah, it's just a brilliant sounding record. It's so different. Like that's the thing that I can't, I always, when I listen to this record, I go, it just sounds so different from any other record. Not only just any other Metallica record, but any other record.
One of the most unique sounding records ever, especially in metal. And there's a theory going around, and maybe it's true. I've yet to fully confirm it, but they recorded the whole record at specific tempos and specific tunings. And then during the mixdown process, they sped the songs up slightly. And I believe that because especially if you listen to the vocals just have like this slightly different timbre on them where it's totally believable to me that, because on an analog tape machine, as you remember, there was a little varispeed knob and you could slow the tape down or speed it up. And the slightest increment of speed up, which would only change the tuning ever so slightly, could make a drastic difference in the feel of the song and the speed of a song. And I have no doubt that they sped some of these songs up, if not all of them, in the mixdown process. Because it's easier to play them slightly slower speed in some cases, unless it's double bass. Most drummers prefer to play faster.
I don't know if they did, quite honestly. From what I remember about all those recordings, they didn't use those tricks at all. So they just played it the way they played it.
It's a subtle move, and there's a fair amount of documentation out there that did happen, but I've never fully delved into it. But it does kind of sound like it to me. And if you're tuned standard on a guitar or even drop D, can you play along to the record, and are you in tune? If you're not, pretty easy test. They change the pitch of the song.
Yeah.
So I guess I could answer my own question fairly easily.
And in full disclosure, Sam Dunn, who's coming up next, so I'm gonna talk to you about this song, was very passionate about it. By the way, we were talking about a bit about the recording of this and how great Cliff was, and he played a Rickenbacker. And Sam mentioned, I don't think he played a Rickenbacker in the studio. And I'm looking, and he did not. He played an Aria Pro 2 SB1000 through a Mesa Boogie amplifier heads and caps, which makes sense. But yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times, whatever people are using to play live is not what they use in the studio.
Correct. Yeah. And that's especially for guitar players. I've had where they want to use a Les Paul in the studio because it sounds great, but they don't want to play it live because it weighs a ton, or vice versa. Can't get it in tune in the studio, but looks great live. So they'll use like a locking nut cheesy guitar and then play a Les Paul live to look cooler,
Yeah, but it's interesting because I was wondering about that because I'm not a big Rickenbacker fan really as bass, but Geddy Lee clearly made it sound great, and so does Cliff. But it's interesting that they did use something different in the studio, which is, as you know, not uncommon at all. I think most of the time bands' touring gear is never used in the studio, and they have certain guitars or drums or whatever that they like to use while they're recording.
Absolutely, and that does not surprise me. And when you're making a record, it's just whatever sounds great is the most important thing. And I've had drummers be like, "Oh, we can't take pictures because that's not my drum company." I'm like, I don't care. We need to record with what sounds the best. So, get over it.
Right. I do know that part of the reason why these Metallica records with Fleming did so well is they got along really well with him. And, clearly Fleming being Danish and Lars being Danish does not hurt. Mm-hmm. But he's a really good guy. And I remember specifically these two records, which of course makes a lot of sense because they're both incredible classic records. But everybody got along, and I know they really liked Fleming. And, they still were young kids, learning how to do things. And they all got along really well and were all on the same page. Tell us how important that is as a producer to be able to get along with everybody, have everybody be on the same page while you're in the studio recording.
I mean, it's the most important thing. The gear and the sounds and all that's all secondary. The songs and the vibe and the personalities is literally everything, because if you don't have that, it's a terrible process. I can't tell you how great it is to walk in a studio when you really click with somebody. And I have that with a lot of my clients, which is why I have so many return clients. We just get along. We have the same vision. I capture the sound that they want. They deliver me what I think is going to make them a better, bigger band. They deliver. And, it's a cohesive relationship. And especially with a band like Avatar, who I made so many records with, and I'm, consider myself like brothers with those guys. And, we get along so well. On the other hand, you can get into a danger area when you know somebody too well and you're too familiar. You can almost predict how they're going to react or say, so to keep that fresh can also be challenging. So I leave that job up to me, is to like, let's not get stale. So I don't let myself get stale in that situation.
Yeah, that's hard to do. And that's why a lot of bands, will kind of move around and use different producers at different times. Just even a lot of time for the band, just they want to feel, because you're right, you get comfortable and sometimes they want to be pushed a little bit. But then again, if you find a thing that works, Iron Maiden and Martin Birch, and certainly for this time period, Metallica and Fleming Rasmussen, like, you don't want to mess it up, right?
Absolutely. Rush and Terry Brown. I mean, the list goes on. If you find it and it's working and you have success, don't mess with it.
Yeah.
I think if you're having failures, it's smart to move on. And I would totally understand if a band came to me and just said, look, we're going to try something new. And it has happened. So, you can't take it personally. Their career is important to them. So they're going to do what's most important.
By the way, to piggyback on your Terry Brown thing, you hit me up, texted me the other day. Have you seen this documentary on Terry Brown by Rick Beato? And I said, no, I haven't seen it. So I watched it, and it is amazing. And it's really fascinating because he goes through all the Rush stuff and some other things. And, we were lucky enough to work with Terry on a bunch of records as well. And such a nice guy, and, but great story. So thanks for that. And if you guys, I think you just look up Rick Beato on YouTube and you can find it. It's a good watch and listen.
Oh yeah. Great interview. And I hope he does more of that. I mean, obviously he's hit, Brendan O'Brien and many other big producers, but I hope he does Fleming, actually. I think that would be really interesting to get Fleming's take on recording these records, and Injustice for All, because obviously that's a lightning rod record for a lot of people. I think it's fucking awesome. And I even like the way it sounds, which is odd because I'm a producer, but I think it sounds cool.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. But and in fairness to Fleming, like, he just recorded it, he didn't mix it, and obviously the mixing is where the bass suddenly didn't exist. But that's all another story for another day. But
absolutely,
again, man, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian.
Hey everyone, Brian Slagel here, founder of Metal Blade Records. I spent my whole entire life trying to make metal history and make metal better and promote metal as much as I can. And now there's a brand new way for you to test your metal knowledge and relive those iconic moments. It's called Metal Mondays, the official metal trivia game from Metal Blade and Pantheon Media, and it's free to play right now. Every Monday, a new game drops. From Slayer, Supremacy to Death, Metal 101, 80s, Metal Blade Classics, and tons more. You'll battle it out on the leaderboards, win killer prizes, and even score some exclusive Metal Blade merch. So if you think you know your riffs, your legends, and your deep cuts, prove it. Download, hit replay on the App Store or Google Play, or head to metalbladerecords.com/Metal Mondays and start playing today. Because in metal, there's no off days. Only Metal Mondays. Metal Mondays. Play loud, play true, and play to win.
Visible puts the ultimate wireless hack in the palm of your hand. With unlimited 5G wireless data and hotspot designed to keep you connected, powered by Verizon's 5G network. And no contract holding you back. Plans start at $25 a month, or get the premium Visible Plus Pro plan and save $10 on your first month when you use promo code HACK. Make the switch at Visible.com. Terms apply. See Visible.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by San Pellegrino Ciao. A gift from Italy to your home. San Pellegrino Ciao is a flavored sparkling water made with real fruit juice, finished with a pinch of Sicilian salt for a perfectly balanced taste. So which flavor will you choose? Peach, lime, blood orange, cherry, or maybe the all-new limoncello? Crafted in Italy with 0 grams of added sugar. San Pellegrino Ciao. Buy it now.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
It's going to take a minute, but I'll try. I can't list everything, but we welcome in an award-winning film producer. Some of his credits are Metal Evolution, Super Duper Alice Cooper, Rush, Beyond the Lighted Stage, and he's got a new one coming up with Judas Priest, which we're all very excited about. Mr. Sam Dunn, the legend. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Brian. I'm really good. It's good to be here. Nice to spend some time. We don't get to see each other much, so this will do.
Yes, that's the most fun about doing this podcast, because there's no money in it, but it is. I get to see all my friends, so that I haven't seen for a while in some cases. So it's super fun, and it's also super fun, as always, to talk about Metallica and the great Cliff Burton, who is, of course, the highlight of this song, Orion. We'll get to the other song you wanted later. We will talk about that. I'm very sorry about that, but
I'm still mourning.
I know, it's okay. Yeah. But anyway, so why Orion?
I was born in 74, so in 86 I turned 12, and 86 probably the most important year in metal for me because of Master of Puppets and Rain and Blood. Sort of end of story right there. Coming of age, just hitting puberty, coming out of the Rat, Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, and through the Maiden, Priest kind of phases, and then bam, an album like Master of Puppets lands in 86 and mind-blowing. So why Orion? Well, the other layer to it is I'm a bass player. And so Christmas 1986, I got my first bass guitar, and my immediate heroes were Steve Harris, Geddy Lee, and of course, Cliff Burton. And so Orion to me was just this majestic composition that really featured the bass, which is an anomaly in metal, right? And so listening to the track and then learning through reading and the way that they recorded the bass, that a lot of, that composition is a Cliff Burton composition, but then also that the bass is a major featured element in that song, and the distortion, the tone of the bass just blew my mind. So Orion, I loved all the songs on that record, but I think Orion was the one that just sort of really captivated me.
Yeah, it's an amazing song. I mean, it's an amazing record, of course, but that's such a great song because, Cliff was such an important part of that band, and a really wonderful person, and really interesting to talk to. Like I've told the stories a bunch, but, although he was our same age, we're all like in our early 20s at that point, but he was an old soul and felt like more worldly and more kind of wiser than all of us a little bit sometimes. So it's always fun to talk to him. And even his musical, he loved metal, but he loved, everything from, Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson to, Hank Williams, and just different things that we all weren't really into back then. And he brought a lot of that to Metallica. And a lot of that, you can feel those influences in this song. I don't want to say it's not a typical Metallica song, because it kind of is, but it has different feels to it. This is kind of the first time where you can kind of hear where they might end up a little bit later.
Yeah, I was into Rush, and I liked Call of Cthulhu on Ride the Lightning. And, I was pretty into epic tracks, big Maiden guy. So Hallowed Be Thy Name, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and others. And, Peace of Mind. Side 2 of Peace of Mind is like the ultimate prog Maiden side, and has stood the test of time for me. But point there is, I don't know, I always lean towards the longer songs with a lot of different musical parts and, lots of layers. To me, that was like, still is what I really love about metal music. Yeah, sure, I'll take Damage Incorporated and Battery any day of the week, but it's tracks like Orion that are really kind of expansive. And to your point, like Burton I never met him myself, of course, but read a million things about him, and he was really into classical music and studied Bach, right? And you can hear it in that song big time. And it sort of proved to me that metal and classical in some ways kind of had this kinship as well, which I just thought was super cool as a 12-year-old kid who was just trying to do his best to sound like his heroes on the instrument.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I love the epics. In fact, my top 5 songs, I don't know if there's anything in there that's under like 7 or 8 minutes. I love the big epics. I love the big stuff. And you're very true about classical music, because really when you look at the foundations of heavy metal, it's the blues and classical. Those are by far the two biggest influences. What I've learned through doing this podcast is, especially with drummers, is jazz is another one. Yep. That's come up almost every time I've interviewed a drummer, from, Dave Lombardo to, Roger from Flock, to, literally everybody. Big influence on drummers was jazz, which I never really kind of figured out before, but certainly classical and the blues are those are the two beds of music where metal can really come through on. And I think you're right. This one has a lot of that feel to it too. There's so many. It's such an interesting song because there's just so many layers to it, and it's an instrumental. So those are usually fairly simple, but not this song. There's just so much going on, even though there's no vocals, and you don't get bored. Sometimes I'll admit with some instrumentals, I'm like, okay, there's no vocals. After a couple minutes, you're like, okay, enough of that. But this one is so fascinating, so interesting to hear it, that it's fun to just sit and listen to it and go like, wow, this is a really incredible piece of music.
Well, yeah, it is like a classical composition in the sense that it builds, right? And of course it builds and builds and builds. And then it's got the mellow breakdown in the middle, which again is bass driven. And, I had the Master of Puppets bass tablature book, at age 12 and 13. So I sat in my bedroom and I needed to learn that whole section in the middle there. And then that builds again, right? So it has this kind of like, it builds and builds and builds towards this breakdown, this mellow section. And then it builds again. And it's actually when it comes out of that mellow section where I think the song really takes off, towards the end. And it kind of like, it ends it like more intensely than it even started. I think it's just brilliant the way it's put together.
Agreed. How hard was it to learn how to play the bass parts?
Well, at that time, pretty hard. Like the right hand plucking. I mean, Cliff was a monster with the right hand, right? So my little 12-year-old skinny hands were, like, how do you get that attack and the precision at the same time was always like the challenge. The left hand stuff had some challenges too, but I remember it was like in the heavier parts, how to get the like to get that attack with the right hand without a pick is really hard. That I remember was the main, like that articulation, right, is really difficult I don't think people understand how difficult that is to achieve when you're playing with the fingers and to keep it consistent. Right? Like, it's like, okay, you're kind of digging in and pulling out, but to keep it consistent through is a real workout. So yeah, I had a lot of like massaging of the right forearm that was needed,
Yeah, we'll build up those muscles there. Exactly. I have to admit that I'm never been a big fan of Rickenbacker basses in metal, except really for two incredible bass players, Cliff and Geddy Lee. They both play predominantly Rickenbackers, and they both make it work, which is really interesting because I think it's a different tone to it. Like most everybody uses the Steve Harris, Fender models, and that's kind of that's the known entity in metal for the most part. And Rickenbackers just have a kind of a clinky, kind of different sound to it, but those guys were both so brilliant. To me, it doesn't sound like a Rickenbacker. It sounds like something completely different. So they must have kind of crafted their sound and how they played and the tones. I know Cliff did, because he kind of almost looked at it like playing a rhythm guitar as opposed to playing a bass sometimes. And he wanted to make it sound different. Of course, obviously any bass player will say Steve Harris was a massive influence. And I know that was for Cliff too.
I should do my fact checking because I'm not maybe you know this. I'm not 100% certain that Cliff used a Rickenbacker on the recording of
he may not have, and that's also another thing that's there. That's always the interesting thing with recordings, because what bands use on stage when they play on stage is generally not what they use in the studio.
Yeah, I mean, Cliff had the Aria Pro 2, right, which was kind of his signature. That's what he was playing on the photos on my bedroom wall. So whether he was using it on that record, I'm not sure. But your point is valid. I mean, there's nowhere to hide with a Ricky. You got to be good. There's no hiding behind the subtones and, et cetera. So for guys like Geddy, and of course, Geddy's hero was Chris Squire, but that's what made them so good, I think, was that they were able to, again, have that attack and have it cut through. So the bass was a little bit more of a lead instrument with Geddy and with Cliff. So
Yeah, it's also interesting that Cliff played a lot of guitar on this song too. I mean, he pretty much wrote, the whole thing basically, and he's playing guitar along with James and Kirk on this song, which is a really interesting thing. That's why, like I said, I know his mindset when playing bass had a lot to do with it, trying to make it sound like a guitar, but almost like a third guitar and not a bass as much. It's interesting how people's minds work sometimes about music.
I'm surprised still to this day, it's 40 years since that record, how few people know that the second solo in the mellow section is the bass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like the pinnacle part for me. The tone there, because of course I'm a nerd, but I'm not nerdy enough to know all the effects he used on that track. But just the tone of the bass in that solo, I was like, wow. And another name I should mention is Billy Gould. I don't think Billy Gould ever gets enough credit from Faith No More.
Of course.
That's a whole other conversation. Billy, I've met several times over the years, and I mean, that band, don't get me started, but incredible bass player who also was similar in that he found bass tones that could cut through the wall of the Jim Martin guitars, right? And so I'm still a 12-year-old. I still can't, shake all those early influences. They're still with me.
I agree. And there's a huge Cliff Burton tie in there because Jim Martin was one of Cliff's best friends. And I spent a lot of time with Jim Martin when Faith No More was opening for Metallica. I saw a zillion shows and hung out with those guys, especially Jim, because he's just one of the nicest people on the planet. And we could both share some Cliff Burton stories here and there. Oh, his way better than mine. So. But there's a commonality in there too. Yeah, and the whole record. I mean, I go back and forth. Like for me, I prefer Ride the Lightning over this record. But I mean, they're both incredible records and probably my two favorite Metallica records, I guess. But where do you stand on that? Are you a Master guy or a Ride the Lightning guy, or maybe something completely different?
It's all timing. I actually have a very vivid memory of the first time I heard Fight Fire with Fire, and it's funny how. I guess there's a big difference between age 11 and age 12, because I remember sitting in my friend's living room and he played me the cassette of Ride the Lightning. And I think it had just come out. And I remember my ears were actually, and I'm like a dyed-in-the-wool extreme metal fan. Like I've been listening to this music forever now, but I remember distinctly going, like my ears were like, holy shit, like this is like, so heavy, and I almost wasn't ready for it. But then within a year, I was, and so if the chips were down, probably Master, just because of the timing of when I first heard, like those songs are just much more imprinting on me than the songs in Ride the Lightning. Of course, I love Ride the Lightning as well. I mean, Trapped Under Ice and Call of Cthulhu and the song Ride the Lightning, like those are my favorites. But I think just because of timing, I mean, I know we could go down the rabbit hole of the production on Master of Puppets and, it is what it is. But at the time, that mid-rangey wall of guitars was just like, it was like a symphony almost, right? It had this larger than life sound. And this is, of course, before the Black Album, and Metallica blew the doors off production with that record, right? But I think it was just the timing and the overall sonic impact of the production on that record. It was just like, holy shit, nothing else sounded like that yet,
Yeah, and that's an interesting record because it doesn't sound like, I mean, Metallica's always had interesting productions over their career, obviously. But when you listen to that record, Master Puppets, yeah, it doesn't sound like any other record, any other Metallica record, or really any other record that came out around that time period, which is really kind of interesting. And I know talking to those guys, they always are going out to make something creative and different and be different from everybody else. And I know even in the production realm, they're kind of trying to do that. And this was their first. This is really the first album they actually had a real budget, more or less, because they're on a major label by this point, and they've got an actual budget where they can spend some more time in the studio. So I think a lot of times you'll see that when bands make a couple of records, independent records or smaller records with smaller budgets, then they get a big budget and they kind of go a little crazy. I mean, Sabbath with Sabotage, which is an amazing and probably my favorite Sabbath record. But that's the first time they really had a lot of time in the studio. And I think the same thing with Master, where they made this record that sounded a lot different than anything else because they had the time and they had the creativity to want to do something different.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, to me, I always want the bass to be a little louder in the mix, but I could be a little more Cliff on that album for me, for sure. But not to belabor the point, but I think it was the sound of those guitars that was really just like overwhelming, like the intro to Battery and the way that that whole build happens at the beginning of the album was just, there wasn't anything that sounded like it. And interestingly, like my other favorite record from that year, Rain and Blood, couldn't possibly be more different in terms of production, right? So I was a little confused. Like I love the symphonic gigantitude of Master of Puppets, but then I'm just straight for the jugular, no reverb, kick drums pounding you in the forehead sound of Rain and Blood that had its appeal too. So what a time, right? It was like, It was a time when everyone was still trying to figure it out. I mean, this, right? Like, it's like the idea of producing a metal record was still like a question, right? Like it was, how do we convey the power of this music? And yet it not just be a complete wall of noise and a mess, right? It was a challenge.
100%. I lived it. I know. But if you're not Martin Birch, which every record he made was incredibly perfect sounding. But yeah, these bands were figuring it out. But with Slayer, it's really interesting you bring up Rain and Blood, because that record was so fast that you really couldn't have a lot of effects on it, because it would have muddied it up. I know when we did Hell Awaits, for example, the one before Rain and Blood, which is one of my favorite Slayer records, just because it's a lot. There's a lot of different parts to it. It's fast. It's small. It's long songs and everything. But Rain and Blood is just pretty much constantly just smashing you in the head, which is why it's such an amazing, brilliant record. But you almost had to have it be stripped down, otherwise it just would have been a mess.
Yeah, there's no way that the ear could make sense of all of the intricacy and the speed on that album if it had any reverb whatsoever. So I'm with you. I mean, I know we're not talking about Rain and Blood here, but there's a stroke of genius there, right? And another album celebrating 40 years, of course, this year. So I've been thinking about those albums a lot recently. As
we all should. But we talk about all sorts of things here, which leads me to the original song. When we first talked a year or so ago, you originally wanted to do Orion and the Ancient Mariner, which oddly enough has been one of the most popular requests for guests to do. So if I did the episode with my buddy Vaughn Lewis, who is a massive Iron Maiden fan, but you really want to do that, and why? What was the reasoning behind you wanted to pick that song?
I mean, in a nutshell, to me, it's almost like the song that contains everything great about metal, like in a single song. It's almost like if you had to pick the one song, sort of the 101 for the uninitiated, that might be one, because, well, partly what we've been talking about with Orion, what is it, 12 minutes? I forget 13. The running time, 13 minutes. It's just epic in all manners of the word, like the lyrics based on a Coleridge poem, the way the whole thing builds. Again, it's like a classical piece with several movements, and the bass figures very prominently. So there's my bias. Again, it's a journey, much like Orion is a journey. When I talk to people about the films we've made over 20 years now, it's like, I always say, like, they're all hard and they're all a miracle. And the one I would probably ever want to relive would be Flight 666, because of the experience of making it, being on Ed Force One for 7 weeks and whatever it was, 20 odd shows and 3 or 4 continents. Unbelievable. And I got to hear Rhyme and the Ancient Mariner every night, and I never got tired of hearing that song. And I'm no camera person. That's why we don't let me touch the camera at Banger. But for that, I spent several shows sitting right beside a lot of the shots of Nico in the film, the close-ups, like I'm just tucked in there with him. The 12-year-old in me is like, I'm like this far from Nico playing that song on the drums, right? So I never got tired of that song, because it just so immensely powerful. The guitar harmonies, like just everything about it. It's just like, there's no end to my answer here. I'll just keep talking. It's got everything about metal that I love, for sure. Yeah,
I mean, look, Iron Maiden's my favorite band of all time. I've seen them over 300 times now, and I don't ever get bored either. I mean, they play the same, every tour they play the same set list over and over again, but I'll see it 15 times and I'll love it every time. It's just all the songs are so good. And I agree with Rhyme. It's just one of those amazing songs. It's so much fun live because it takes you on that whole journey, and you just see what they're doing with the live thing and with the smoke and their whole effects and everything. It makes it really fascinating to watch all of it. But
it also made me feel a lot smarter than I really am, because I could brag that I'm familiar with the Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem, which is not entirely true, but
I think we all are now, right?
Yeah, sort of made me feel a little more literary than I really am, but. It just stroke of genius. The songs, of course, that have kinship with that, Hallowed is one of the greats. I was rattling off about side 2 of Peace of Mind, To Tame a Land, and those songs over time, it's like the prog side of a Maiden album, right? Like those songs to me have really stood the test of time, and maybe didn't appreciate them as much at the time because it was just all about like the Trooper and Number of the Beast and Aces High and all that stuff. But the longer epic stuff is really, Maiden was the band that was the conduit from the prog stuff before them and brought that into metal. They were the ones that did that. Yeah,
it's amazing. Like one of my all-time favorite songs, which I thought they would never ever play live, is Alexander the Great. And all of a sudden, this last tour they played. I when I saw the set list, I almost fell off my chair. It's one of my favorite Maiden songs ever. And of course, live, it's absolutely incredible. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wonder. It's funny with the Metallica thing. It's just like, Call of Cthulhu and Orion and To Live Is to Die on Justice. There's kind of a trilogy of like the instrumental long song. And I've never asked Lars of the guys if that was a Maiden thing. If the concept of having one of those songs late in the record was taken from Maiden, because kind of Maiden did that, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, obviously, they're massively influenced by Maiden. So, all the stuff they do comes from somewhere, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. I'll make a note of that, though, when I see them when they come to Vegas to play Sphere, which should be incredible. And I'm very curious and hoping that this is going to be one of the songs they play, because certainly they play it a lot, obviously. It's a big tribute to Cliff. And Robert does a really great job playing on it, too. He does a really good job. But I'm curious to see it, because it'll be amazing to see what kind of graphics they use on that song. There's got to be some massive, 80-foot Cliff Burton images somewhere along the line, hopefully.
If there was a Metallica song built for Sphere, it's Orion. Yeah.
With just what it's about and the whole thing, it certainly should work. So well, they're doing 2 separate sets. So I'm gonna hope that one of the sets will include Orion with an amazing graphic behind it, because it just seems like kind of a no-brainer. I haven't asked them about anything because I don't want to know. I know a little bit about the stage, how they're doing the stage there, which is unique for Sphere, but I don't want to know anything else. I want to go in knowing nothing.
We're cut from the same cloth, Brian, because I don't check set lists before I go to the shows. My son, who's 14 and is a drummer and is into a lot of metal, he's like, Dad, I just don't understand you. Like, he needs to know all the songs in advance. It's just a generational thing. I still don't like to know. Like, I like to have the experience of being surprised. That's partly what it's all about for me,
Yeah, my only problem being a very old man now is I need to find the bathroom breaks. So I'll usually, if I do the set list, I just, okay, I have one here and here. I can plan that out. But otherwise, I don't want to know. And especially Sphere, because the graphics and stuff are so insane. I don't want to know. I definitely don't want anything about that. So at least at first.
Well, that's amazing. I hope to check that out as well.
You must. It's a must do. It's I've seen 4 shows at Sphere. It's just insane. It's like nothing else you'll ever see in your entire life. And Metallica there is going to be nuts.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, it's you live down the road now, so that's handy.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, finally somebody's coming to me now. I like it.
Right.
So Banger Films, you've been doing this for a long time, many awards and all this amazing. I mean, every documentary you've made has been absolutely incredible. All of them. I'm a huge fan of all that stuff. So tell me what you've got coming up. I know there's the Priest one, which sounds interesting. A lot of people are very excited about that, obviously.
Yeah, well, the Priest one, super proud of it. We had the world premiere at the Berlin Film Festival in February. It played here in Toronto at the Hot Docs Festival, which is North America's biggest film festival. And then it's actually playing in Sheffield this month We are working on the TV deal, so there's no announcements yet, but it's a work in progress, and just excited to share it with the world beyond the film festival circuit. It's a funny world in the film world sometimes, where films have these initial little kind of breadcrumby releases in various festivals, and then eventually it hits television. But let me say, I mean, I had the pleasure of co-directing the film with Tom Morello, and to be at Berlin, in 2 decades of doing this, we'd never had a film at Berlin. So that was a real high mark for us. It's a really incredible festival, super respected, very well run. And Halford was there, and Jane Andrews, the manager, and Morello, of course, and a lot of people, my business partner, Scott, and everyone. So it was a really, really great launch. Lots of laughs, lots of tears. There's lots of emotion in the film, which I'm proud of. So yeah, that's coming soon to TV. And then I can't really tell you too much more. We do have a documentary coming soon.
Oh, I know. I'm going to ask you off air about that.
Yeah.
But I know you can't say anything yet on air. So yeah. That's all good. Anything else you guys are doing at the moment?
Yeah. We're doing a documentary with Melissa Auftemar, which is really cool. She was the bass player in Hole and Smashing Pumpkins in the 90s. It's an amazing story. So Melissa's Canadian. She grew up in Montreal. When she got into music, she was a photography student at Concordia University. And fast forward, she became Courtney's bass player in Hole, and then later Billy's bass player in Smashing Pumpkins. And through the whole experience of touring Lollapalooza, Tibetan Freedom Concert, Glastonbury, all the major festivals in the 90s, she took over 20,000 photographs.
Oh, wow.
Documenting everything behind the stage, on the stage. She had this genius thing where she set up a pedal board of 5 different pedals, and she'd mounted cameras all over the stage that she could operate the cameras with her feet.
Wow.
So this is the most remarkable collection of like the 90s alternative music moment that I've ever seen. And so we've been filming with Melissa, and she's been reuniting with Billy and with Courtney and all these other people from the 90s to kind of basically go through her photographs and talk about what she captured and what did they mean then and what do they mean now. So that's it's a work in progress, but we're pretty excited about that one.
Nice. That sounds fascinating. Yeah, it's definitely a moment in time, and that's what an incredible story to be actually playing music and then doing photography at the same exact time. I don't know I've ever heard that before.
Yeah, she's really quite brilliant. Like, she'd mount a camera at the back of the stage so you get the full shot of the stage from behind. She's got incredible photos of Courtney standing out front in the floodlights, and then photos of the crowd, and then just really pretty incredible stuff backstage, with Courtney and Frances Bean. Frances was, just a toddler at that time. And so it's just a really intimate insight into that. There's photos of, Beck's in photos, and Michael Stipe, and, Zach De La Rocha. It's a real mixed bag of folks. So yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome. Well, we will look forward to that. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, so thanks again for doing this.
My pleasure, Brian. Thanks for having me.
That'll do it. Cool talking with my old friend, Sam Dunn. He's got some really cool new stuff coming out, so watch for that. It's going to be really interesting. Always great to talk to Jay Ruston and Dr. Martin Popoff, thanks to him as well. And thanks to Lizzie Borden for our theme song, and our producer, Christian Blatt. He makes this whole ship roll. We'll see you guys next episode.